We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Daled Amud Beis and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 34b. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in a brisa, letotafos, letotafos, letotafos. It says letotafos 3 times. 2 of the times it says it without the vav in singular, and then 1 of the times it's with the vav in plural, and so that's a total of 4. The first 2 are considered 1 each, so that's 2, and then that last one is considered like 2, so that's another 2. Harei kan daled, that refers to 4. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael, these are the words of Rabbi Yishmael. Rashi explains letotafos, 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 harei kan daled, mikan shekosev daled parshios bedaled bottom. From here we learn that one writes the 4 parshios of the tefillin in the 4 bottom, talking about the tefillin shel rosh. And the brisa continues, Rabbi Kiva says, Eino tzarich, it's not necessary to learn this from letotafos, 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 because tat bekaspe shtayim, because tat in the language of kaspe is 2, and pas ba'afrike shtayim, and pas from letotafos, that's the pas at the end of the word, that in Afrika, in the language of Afrika, is 2, and 2 plus 2 is 4, that's how we learn out the 4. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in a brisa, Yachol yichtevem al daled oros, one might think that he writes the parshios on 4 hides, on 4 parchments, v'yanichem bedaled batim, and he places them in the 4 batim, the 4 compartments of the tefillin, bedaled oros, with 4 separate hides. Maybe each compartment is a separate hide. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, L'zikaron beinei necha, it says L'zikaron beinei necha, and that means Zikaron echad amarti lach, it's 1 remembrance for you, v'lo beis v'gimel zachronos, not 2 or 3, and so therefore, haketzad, how does it work? Kosvan al daled oros, he writes them on 4 oros, 4 parchments, umanichon bedaled bottom, and he puts them in the 4 compartments, but it's all be'or echad, it's all in 1 hide. Essentially, that 1 hide is molded into 4 compartments to create the tefillin shel rosh. V'im kasvan be'or echad, and if he wrote them on 1 hide, if it was all on 1 parchment, v'hinichon bedaled bottom, but then inserted each parsha, 1 in each of the 4 compartments, so yatsa, he fulfills his obligation. And the brisa continues, v'tzarech sheyehei revach beinehen, there has to be some space between them. Divrei Rabbi, these are the words of Rabbi. V'chachamim omrim eino tzarech, the chachamim say that space is not necessary. V'shavin, but they agree, shenosein chut o meshicha bein kol achas v'achas, there has to be a string or a cord between each of the compartments. And finally, v'im ein charitza nikar, if the grooves on the tefillin shel rosh, which indicate from the outside the different compartments, if those are not recognizable, psulos, then they are disqualified. And Rashi explains, again, Rebbe says, V'tzarech she'ei revach, there has to be space, bein ha-parshios, between the parshios, between each of the 4 parshios, k'sheyichtevem, when he writes them, shala'achar shekasvan bor echad, after he writes them all on 1 hide, on 1 parchment, yachtoch milmal, he has to cut from above, because they're being inserted so that they're each going up into the 4 compartments, each parsha in its proper compartment. So yachtoch milamal, he has to cut from above, or the parchment, kimin dalet etzbos, it should look almost like 4 fingers sticking out of a hand, v'yanichon bedalet batim, and place them in that way in the 4 batim, v'yeh medubak lemata orechon, and the bottom it'll all be attached as 1 parchment, kedei shetei parsha achas bebayis echad, that's that way there's 1 parsha in 1 compartment. And Rashi continues, beinehem, between them, besoch hadalet batim, in the 4 compartments, or ha'echad, which are made out of 1 hide, there has to be space between them, according to Rebbe, and there is some discussion among the commentaries, what exactly is the machlokes between Rebbe and the Chachamim. Rebbe is saying there needs to be space, and the Chachamim say there's no need to be space. In the earlier Rashi seems to be talking about the space between the parshios written on the parchment, and here in Rashi Beineim, he's talking about the compartments, and so therefore the commentaries argue exactly what is the explanation of the Gemara and what exactly is Rashi's understanding of this brisa. And Rashi continues, Shenosein chut o meshicha bein kol bayis v'bayis. Then the brisa said there should be a string or a cord between each of the compartments. And finally, v'mein charitzon hacharitz shebein kol bayis v'bayis emeino nikar mi bachutz. If the groove cannot be seen from the outside to distinguish between the different compartments in the tefillin shel rosh, psula, then it is disqualified. Kegon masa mechitzos habatim mibifnim. That would be, for example, let's say the separation of the compartments is visible on the inside, v'yein charitz nikar mi bachutz, but the groove is not recognizable from the outside, that would be problematic. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in the Brisa, Ketzad Kosvan, how does he write them? Tefillah shel yad, when it comes to the tefillin of the hand, Kosva al orechad, he writes it on one parchment. V'im Kosva ba'arba oros, now if he writes it on 4 parchments, V'hinicha b'bayis echad, and places it in that one compartment of the tefillin shel yad, Yotza, he fulfills his obligation. However, V'tzarech l'dabik, however, he does now need to attach, if he's writing it on 4 separate parchments, he needs to attach them all together. Either he attaches them by sewing them, stitching them together, or some kind of a glue that puts them together. Shenemar, as it says, V'haya l'chol osa al yodechu, it says it'll be a sign on your hand. Kishem she'osa achas mi b'chutz, just like from the outside it is one os, it is one sign, it is essentially one compartment. Kach osa achas mi b'fnim, so too it should be one side on the inside, that's why they have to be attached. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer Eino Tzarech, Rabbi Yossi says it's not necessary to attach them. Amar Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi says, Umoda li Rabbi Yehuda berivi, and Rabbi Yehuda the Chacham, he admits to me, Shem ein lo tefillin shel yad, that if one does not have tefillin shel yad, v'yesh lo shtei tefillin shel rosh, let's say he has 2 tefillin shel rosh, that there's a simple solution, shetolo or alachas mehen, he can take one hide and put it over one of those tefillin shel rosh, umanicha, and then he could put it on as a tefillin shel yad. Rabbi Yossi says that Rabbi Yehuda admits to that. Now that is problematic because Rabbi Yehuda just said before, in the Brisa it said, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that you have to attach it all together, that it's not allowed to be separate parshios. And now all of a sudden it seems like Rabbi Yossi is saying Rabbi Yehuda admits that its tefillin shel rosh can just be converted easily into a tefillin shel yad. And so the Gemara says, Moda, he admits. Hainu pluksayu, that's what they just argued about. And so the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Midavar of Shel Rabbi Yossi, from these words of Rabbi Yossi we see that Chazar bo Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi Yehuda retracted his opinion and actually ended up agreeing with Rabbi Yossi. But the Gemara continues and asks, Ini, is it really true that a tefillin shel rosh can be made into a tefillin shel yad? V'hashalach Rav Chananya mishmei Rabbi Yochanan, but Rav Chananya sent in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, tefillah shel yad osin osa shel rosh, a tefillin shel yad can be converted into a tefillin shel rosh. V'shel rosh ein osin osa shel yad, but a tefillin shel rosh cannot be converted into a tefillin shel yad. Lefi she'ein moridin mikdusha chamura l'kedusha kala, one is not allowed to go down from a stricter level, a higher level of a kedusha to a lesser level of kedusha. And so how can the Brisa have said above that a tefillin shel rosh can be converted into a tefillin shel yad? And the Gemara continues and answers, Lokash, it's not difficult. Haba tikta, in one case, we're talking with an older tefillin shel rosh, it was actually used as a tefillin shel rosh. That would be a problem to convert it to tefillin shel yad, because now it's already at the higher level of kedusha. Ha bechadita, but in this case we're talking about a new tefillin shel rosh. It wasn't actually used as a tefillin shel rosh yet, so it doesn't have that kedusha. It's not a problem to convert it to a tefillin shel yad. And the Gemara continues now, Lamanda Amar, according to the one who says, Hazmona Milsi, that even designation alone is significant, so even if it wasn't used as a tefillin shel rosh, it should be a problem. It should already have the holiness of a tefillin shel rosh. And the Gemara says to that, even according to that understanding, the Asni Alayu Meikara, we can be talking about where there was a condition made from the outset that this might be used as a tefillin shel yad, and then it would be okay. And Rashi explains, tefillin shel rosh chamura kedushasa, tefillin shel rosh is considered a higher level of kedusha, sharubo shel shakai nasa b'shel rosh, because the majority of the word shakai is by the shel rosh, the shin daled, the shin and daled are in the shel rosh, aval b'shel zroba, by the tefillin of the arm, ein ela yud, there's only the yud, sheyesham ritzua katana, there's a small strap there, kashir rochav etzba, it's very small, it's like the width of a finger, of a sof rosha ma'at kamin yud, and so then at the end it's turned a little like a yud, v'yod ksiv, and furthermore it's written, v'ro kol ami, that everyone will see, v'tanya b'lazar agadol omer, elu tefillin shebarosh, when it says everyone, all the nations will see, that's a reference to the tefillin shel rosh, and that indicates that those have a higher level of holiness. And the Gemara continues, Tana Rabbanan, the sages taught in a Brisa, Ketzad Sidron, what is the order of the Parshios? Kadeshli v'haya kiviyacha miyamin, Kadeshli and v'haya kiviyacha, that's from the right side, and Shema v'hayim shemoa mismol, and Shema v'hayim shemoa, that's on the left side. Rashi understands that it simply means if one is facing the person wearing the tefillin, so from right to left, it's going to be Kadeshli v'haya kiviyacha, Shema, and then v'hayim shemoa. But the Gemara continues, Vatanya Ipcha, we have a brisa that says the exact opposite, that it's in the exact opposite direction. It's Kadesh Vayikeviyacha Shema V'Hayim Shamoa, not going from right to left, but going from left to right. And the Gemara says to that, Amar Abai says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan miyamino shel kore, the first way we understood, that's from the right of the person who's reading it, meaning a person who would be facing someone wearing the tefillin. Then it goes Kadesh V'Hayikeviyacha Shema V'Hayim Shamoa, Kan miyamino shel meiniach, but in the other brisa, it's talking from the right side of the person wearing it, so everything is reversed. V'hakore kore kasidron, and the idea is that a person who will read the parshios and the tefillin is essentially reading them in the order that they are found in the Torah. And again, the order they're found in the Torah is Kadesh V'Haya Kiviyacha, Shema, and then V'Haya Im Shamoa. And of course, with regards to the understanding of this Gemara, there's the famous machlokas between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam in terms of the order of the parshios, and other Rishonim also have alternate opinions. And the Gemara continues at the Tudat. Amar Rav Chananel Amar Rav. Rav Chananel says that Rav says, Hechlif parshios psulos. If the order is switched around, then they are disqualified. Amar Abaya says, Lo Amran, that's only said, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph.